Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So I am going to be reacting to the 2024 Player's Handbook, everything you need to know.
Largest Player's Handbook the game has ever had.
I think I'm going to have to pause it. Okay. They're about to do the stream here for revealing some things in the Player's Handbook, and there's some things I need to let you know up front. I already have this Player's Handbook. Wizards of the Coast approached me about giving me a review copy, which I have. I got it about a week ago. I have read it, and so nothing in this video is going to be a surprise to me. However, I also signed a non-disclosure agreement that I wouldn't reveal any contents of the book until a given date. This is going to give me a chance to create some videos for you guys beforehand, but I'm not able to reveal any contents of the book. But they're about to reveal some contents from the book that I already know about, and I have been excited to share my opinions with you, and I can certainly do that. So, let's watch.
Has been rebuilt from the ground up. It is filled with new options as well as returning options that have been refined, reimagined, rebalanced, and the whole book has also been restructured to aid reference at the table, to make it easier than ever before to create a character, and we have also packed it with enough new options that even people who have been playing this game for a decade will find whole new ways to customize their characters, you know, between the different class features, the subclass options, the new feats, the new equipment options, the new crafting rules, the new spells, the revised spells. You combine all of that, and this is like having the game that you were already playing completely like glowed up. It says it's just top to bottom has been improved.
It's been very distracting for me because I should be doing my work and doing research, but I'm mostly looking at different character builds now, using like weapon mastery or how sneak attack works, because there's a lot of systems in this, but it's very simple at the same time. Like it has a momentum as you're reading it and an excitement.
And that really gets at one of our core goals, which was streamline as much as possible while also trying to make it easier than ever before to engage with the game, while also making it deeper, giving you more ways to imagine your character, more tactical options. We have specially focused when it comes to tactical options on making the weapon experience more rich. So if you're playing a weapon-focused character, you are going to have a level of tactical excitement that your character never had before. You're going to find ways of, from level to level, evolving how your character plays, because just shifting from using the mastery option of one weapon to using the mastery option of another is going to sometimes subtly change how the game plays for you, and then other times not so subtly. It will be a dramatic shift. Now, people who focus more on the magic end of the spectrum are also going to find, when they dive into this massive spell chapter, over 100 pages long, close to 400 spells, many revised, a number brand new, some returning from books like Xanathar's Guide and Tasha's Cauldron, but even those reimagined. But also they're going to have non-combat options that they didn't have before, ways to enrich their social interaction scenes, their exploration scenes in ways that they couldn't before. And then we did the same with our weapon-focused characters. Again, something that people got to see as a part of the Unearthed Arcana process, that we made sure that classes that before, like say the Barbarian, that were primarily combat-focused, now have ways to contribute outside combat. There was no corner of the game that we did not zero in on as we built this new Player's Handbook, and as we build the new Dungeon Master's Guide and the new Monster Manual. Every part of the game, whether it relates to the combat pillar, the exploration pillar, or the social interaction pillar, has gotten a fresh coat of paint with new ways to play and in some cases, surprises that people didn't even get to see as a part of the Unearthed Arcana process. Great example of that in the Player's Handbook are the brand new crafting rules.
There were always moments in the last 10 years of playing the game that you sometimes would find a moment, I wish I could do this, or I could wish there was a rule for that. Well, now there is. Like, if I wanted to use my sneak attack to knock out a target, rather than kill them, that's there now. Like, as a barbarian, if I want to feel like I'm channeling something primal in myself and maybe use my strength score to actually inform like perception or stealth, there's a moment where you can do that, and that's why I'm so obsessed with making new combos. What's the most exciting thing for you, Chris?
It's hard to nail down. There's a lot of things. I love how information has been reorganized in the book so I can find things easier. The rules glossary, I think, is going to be a huge boon to a lot of players. Having a centralized place where all the rules are very clearly and concisely defined. But on a more selfish level, I am delighted by the weapon mastery properties. Jeremy and I were in a game recently where I was playing a fighter, but we were playing basically 2014 characters. And having play tested the weapon mastery stuff for the better part of a year now, it was a bit of a shock to go back to a fighter that didn't have that. And I think a lot of players who like hitting things with weapons are going to be as delighted as I have been. I feel playing a fighter without it now rather naked.
All right, so no surprise. I think everyone knew that if you've been paying attention, that weapon masteries would be in the Player's Handbook, and indeed they are. One thing I will mention is that in my personal playtesting, and we did a lot of playtesting, the weapon masteries add something, but I didn't think they were as big a deal as Chris Perkins seems to be suggesting. What I did find is that there were significant upgrades to some of the classes that I felt really needed it, like the monk and like the barbarian. Really different feeling in terms of the base classes and the subclasses that enhanced tactical options, like Jeremy Crawford had mentioned, and that enhanced as well just the feeling of being good, right? Like effective. And I am pleased to report that in the Player's Handbook, that has carried through. In fact, if you've played the playtest, you're going to see a lot of the stuff from the playtest has carried through the Player's Handbook. Not all of it. Some of it has been changed. Some of it is gone. But a lot of it went through as is. And there are a number of changes that you didn't see in the playtest. But I would say if you were to look at all the changes in the Player's Handbook, most of them you probably saw in the playtest already. The other thing I'll talk about a little bit here is he talks about organization, and I will say, yeah, the setup of the Player's Handbook is significantly changed from the 2014 one. This is a more rules-light game now. If you think of your 2014 Player's Handbook, you have a certain amount of room for classes and races and spells and feats, and then you have a whole bunch of other stuff, just rules of the game. That rules of the game part has been condensed, and all that other stuff has been increased. So there's more rules on classes and subclasses. Of course, as you know, we're going to have more subclasses, more feats in the Player's Handbook. But in order to make room for that, they've taken the base rules and they have been condensed. Though, essentially, if you played 2014 Dungeons & Dragons, 2024... You're going to transition, I think, pretty easily.
And exposed.
But it is like a remarkable feeling. Like you have, it not only drives, like I'm swinging a sword, but I'm also doing this. Like maybe I'm using this weapon, maybe I'm knocking you back. Maybe I missed and I'm still grazing you and doing damage. And you're making now choices that make those weapons important. Like if you're using a scimitar, a dagger, if you're using a heavy crossbow, there's an advantage to it. It has a tactic to it. Like I can't imagine martial classes without this now.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things about this opportunity to revise the books is we we can do more wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because we're building on a system that is sound and tried and true and that people love. We can now take 10 years of feedback of, oh, I wish the game did this, or I wish this class did that, and deliver on those wishes.
It also means that with the core rules in the book, so, you know, in addition to all the fun character options and whatnot, well, the rules themselves that run the game have also been enhanced, where we were able to take things that maybe have been house rules for people over the past 10 years and make them a core part of the game. Great example of this. Many people over the last 10 years have allowed people to drink potions as a bonus action, feeling it was way too punishing running the rules as they were written in 2014 to have to spend your entire action drinking a potion. Particularly scary if you're dying and you're drinking that healing potion. And so people are going to find that now healing potions take a bonus action to drink. And there are shifts like that.
There is cheering happening, right?
That is one of the most common house rules I have ever seen. In fact, whenever I run, and I usually don't use a lot of house rules, I constantly get asked by players, I can drink potions as a bonus action, right? So, yeah, that is coming.
Now, while
Yes.
this video is playing.
Yeah, and there are shifts like that everywhere you look in the rules, that it will feel like the game you've been playing, but everywhere you look, enhanced.
As you are looking through the player's handbook, as you're making your character, there's such intentional design behind everything. Every piece of art, the layout. I can flip through this book.
Actually, on the same topic, I can't reveal specifics, but he talks about how all these areas of the game, the little frustrations where there are house rules, they have gone and fixed that. Not all of them. There are a couple sections, one is in my head right now, obviously I can't tell you what it is, where I cannot believe they kept it the same. And they did. And I will be talking about that when I am allowed to. But I highly disagree that they went and fixed everything. They didn't. I don't think they did. They fixed some things, but some things are left unfixed. And things that, to me, were just glaring that they needed an update, and they did not get one, which is disappointing. Although overall I'm excited, I definitely think this is a big improvement. I'm going to tell you right now, there are going to be some things when you read this player's handbook that you're going to not believe they didn't change. And I'll leave it at that.
And
Ward.
So they're talking a lot about the art here. I'm just going to say this about the art. There's a lot in there. I do appreciate that, you know, if you have a class, you're going to see the art for it. If you pick a subclass, you can have art for that. If you pick a species, you can have art for that, and you're going to know what your things look like. And there's more art for spells and all that stuff. And I appreciate that. As for the quality of the art, that's so subjective. I don't even bother with opinions. I like it, I guess. Overall, some of the pictures I like more than others. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about the art.
You then get to the character origins chapter, and you see the different backgrounds available to your character.
And they're literally backgrounds.
They're literally backgrounds.
I love that the most, because you're not interjecting a character to describe what, hey, this is what Charlatan looks like. You're just giving, like, this is the green screen background that your character will be inserted into.
Yes.
Right?
But also, more than that, the backgrounds themselves have all been redesigned, and the entire background system has been reimagined as one half of your character's origin.
Now, there's something that happened with backgrounds between the playtest and the player's handbook that is big. And I would love to talk about it, so I'm hoping they say so. Otherwise, I am not going to be able to.
The other half being your character's species, and the two together interlock to give you a view of who your character was before they became an adventurer.
And it's,
but
it's very intentional because you get a feat based off your background and skills on top of that. And that free feat really informs, like, well, of course, I would have this feat starting off because this is the background I come from. That makes perfect sense. I just like how that's tied together. And that also informs the ability scores.
Yes, and I know we'll be digging deeper into character origins in one of our other videos. But one of the major changes for backgrounds is exactly that they now give you an ability score bonus, or rather set of bonuses. And this is actually going to be new even for people who were part of the Unearthed Arcana process, because in the final version of the backgrounds, each background now lists 3 ability scores, and if you select that background, you then choose how you want to distribute your bonus there.
And just in case you're wondering, this is not what I was alluding to. There is a much, much bigger change to backgrounds that they haven't revealed.
So you can either have +2 in one of them and +1 in another, or you can have +1 in all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And so you have a tremendous amount of flexibility to pair different backgrounds with different classes, because what we wanted to do is make it so that the backgrounds were as flexible as possible to support as many different character concepts as possible.
How have you meddled with the player's handbook? I don't think, what's a nicer way to I was like, what'd you do on the player's handbook?
Well, let's see. Jeremy and I were in the room hashing out the outline for the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
With our good friend and former boss Ray Winninger early on. So I had a hand in sort of sculpting the shape of the book, with Jeremy leading that work, of course. And then I injected myself at various points everywhere I could, creating new spells for the spells chapter, rewriting text from the 2014 book to make it suitable for the 2024 revision.
All 3 of the books we mapped.
That's so Chris mentioned something here that I do want to reiterate, is that the way things are worded in this player's handbook is definitely different than the way things are worded in the 2014 player's handbook. And in pretty much every case, it goes to serve making it easier to understand. So a lot of those rules where people have different interpretations based on how they read it, a lot of that has been clarified so that you read it and it's obvious how it's supposed to work, which I really appreciate. I think that's a big upgrade.
Out, Chris, Ray, and I, we mapped out together. And what people are going to see when all 3 books are out is that intentionality that you talked about, Todd, that we not only carefully plotted out the player's handbook that you've now seen, but also very carefully plotted out the Dungeon Master's Guide, and very carefully plotted out the Monster Manual, and
I should mention, I have not seen the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Monster Manual. They have not reached out to me about early access, but I hope they do. But I will speculate a little bit. I talked a little bit before about how the rules have been narrowed, and I do wonder if some of the rules that were in the player's handbook are moving into the Dungeon Master's Guide. That's just speculation on my part. I don't know what's going to be in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but I do kind of wonder, because some of the stuff that got removed, I think it kind of still want it. So I wonder if it's just being placed in the Dungeon Master's Guide because it was more the purview of the Dungeon Master than the players. And I could definitely see that.
Plotted out how the 3 books integrate with each other. And so in many ways, we view the 3 books as one massive book that's simply too big to publish as a single volume, because it would be about 1,000 pages long.
And that speaks again to the intention of design on all of this. It is remarkable to see how these are all interconnected. I mean, this is an amazing day because this is the first day you can pre-order all 3 books. What I've seen of the DMG is so much friendlier to a new Dungeon Master, and what I've heard is so exciting, and everything I've heard about the Monster Manual. And it does feel like this is one cohesive project in a way that we haven't seen before.
It so cohesive that there is essentially a piece of the monster manual in the player's handbook.
Right.
We were able to coordinate the work in a way that we had never done before, where that was essentially monster manual work we were doing as a part of our player's handbook work, building the creature appendix that is in this player's handbook.
Yeah, so the 2014 Player's Handbook has a creature appendix too, and this one does as well. I made a number of predictions about what we might see in that in relation to how it pertains to moon druids and other things as well. I will say one kind of far out prediction that I did make actually got derided a little bit online. I was teased a bit about it. It's right, and I was quite surprised because I had almost given up on this one, but it looks like it's right, and so I can't wait to talk about it. Obviously, I can't tell you what it is, but I'm excited about it.
The new creature appendix is even bigger than the one that was in the 2014 PH. The creatures have been carefully selected to be in the player's handbook. So, great example of this intentionality. Now, when you go to the equipment chapter and you see a list of available mounts, well, every one of those mounts now has a stat block in the same book. And similarly, when it comes to your familiar options, if you cast Find Familiar, or if you're a warlock with your enhanced familiar options, all those options are present. We also made sure that druids had a really good starting selection of creatures that they could transform into using wild shape. Now, our friends who...
Now, notice he said starting selection. That's what he means. Starting selection. So some of our predictions regards to moon druids didn't happen.
Who use the Circle of the Moon subclass, they're still going to need to visit the monster manual eventually when they get high enough level, because we simply did not have enough pages in the player's handbook to have all the beasts that Circle of the Moon Druid might want available. But even for them, we have a nice selection of beast options so that you can start playing with your main features in this book using the content that is all inside this very book.
Yeah, and because we have 10 years of feedback on the 2014 books, we also knew that we were going to be making some adjustments to our stat block format.
Yes.
To make our stat blocks even easier to run and more fun to run. But that work is not confined only to the monster manual. Going back to the idea that this is a 1,000+ page book broken up into 3 pieces, that stat block revision work impacts all 3 books.
And you'll see that not only in the creature appendix, but also in the Ranger Beastmaster subclass, where that subclass has been completely redesigned, largely inspired by work we did in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but even going beyond what we did in Tasha's. The stat blocks for that Ranger's friends have been redesigned. All of the stat blocks that appear in the new summoning spells that are in the book have been redesigned, all with this view toward making our stat blocks easier to use. And also...
Now, he's talking mainly about formatting rather than actual mechanical changes. Again, I won't say anything too specific.
Really getting under the hood of every stat block and making sure that the creature is delivering the goods when it comes to the damage it deals, its resilience, and also its fun.
You mentioned summoning spells, and again, like what I love about the new player's handbook is everything you need is in the new player's handbook. Like if you want to wild shape, if you want to summon a familiar, but the summoning spells have various options of the type of that creature that you want to use. So if it's an aberration, if it's undead, if it's a fiend, you're not just having to select this one type of stat block creature, you have a variety of options. So
I mean, what Todd is talking about is technically true, but that was always the case. If you have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and you've read the summoning spells, you already know that you could select types. So that's not new here. Again, I don't want to say anything specific, but it sounds like he's implying that you're going to get more options. you're not going to get more options.
If you love summoning and you like to be tactical, it's just layers of options with one singular spell, and you have all the stats you need to just run it. You don't need to grab another book and go hunt something down. It's all in the player's handbook.
And that was something that people loved when we first introduced it in Tasha's Cauldron. And so we were excited to be able to take that approach to summoning and incorporate it into the game's core. But even people who are familiar with those spells in Tasha's will have some fun surprises, because all of those spells have been enhanced for the player's handbook. And so they, like everything else, are glowed up. We even have other parts of the book where options that maybe first appeared in Tasha's Cauldron now appear here and have been enhanced. Great example, the Soul Knife in the Rogue, the Psy Warrior.
There are a number of rules that have been ported over from Tasha's, and some of them we knew about, and some we didn't know about, but you'll find out about them.
In the Fighter, Aberrant Sorcery in the Sorcerer. I bring up
all my psionic boys.
Yes, all a part of our desire to bring more psionics into the core game.
Yeah.
This was actually something that we talked about doing over a decade ago in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and we frankly just didn't have time to do it over a decade ago. And so we thought, now we have the time. And I like to think of it as the great old one Warlock now having their friends show up, so we can you can now have your full
party.
your full psionic crew. Whereas before in 2014, the great old one Warlock was wondering where all their psionic buddies were, and they've now all shown up for the party.
The gray old one is nasty now.
In
gray
all
old
the
one
best
is new
ways.
and super nasty. It gets in your head literally.
Yeah, and so if you've been following the playtests, you already know the subclasses that got really nice boosts and the classes that got really nice boosts. Pretty much most of that went through.
To have some nice advantages in combat.
Yes.
There are significant, lovely changes to so many of these subclasses that just amp them up to more what you wanted to do, more what the kind of core concept was. Again, the Feywild patron for the Warlock, you are just teleporting everywhere. You are just bouncing, and with every time you do use Misty Step, there's a new added-on effect. And it just feels like you've made a pact with a Fey creature. Like, it makes narrative sense, and it gets me excited for like the tactical things I can do with all these subclasses, because I feel like there might have been gaps before in the 2014 versions, and now those have been filled in for that wish fulfillment that we all have.
The Archfey patron Warlock is a great example of a subclass that didn't just get tweaked. It's basically a new subclass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this
And that's true. There are a lot of subclasses that are not going to feel anything like they did before the playtest. That said, if you were playtesting, the subclasses that really have changed are going to be similar to what you saw in the playtest. But what it does do is it makes me excited to try all the stuff that got the biggest changes. So things like the Fey Patron Warlock, things like the Trickery Cleric, things like the World Tree Barbarian. I'm excited for these things to be official, so I can like play them in an official campaign. That'd be great. And of course, a lot of stuff is pretty similar to the way it was in 2014. Like, if you were reading the playtest, you know that the wizard subclasses did not get major revisions. And you're not going to be surprised when you read the actual player's handbook in that regard. So I'm not as excited because I've played those before, though there are different spells, I guess. So there is
book
that.
has 3 brand new subclasses that have never appeared in a D&D book before. We have the Circle of the Sea in the Druid, we have the College of Dance in the Bard, and the Path of the World Tree in the Barbarian. But again, just as the Archfey Patron Warlock has been so redesigned that it's essentially a new subclass, there are other subclasses like that as well. The Warrior of the Elements in the Monk has been so heavily reimagined.
And if you didn't see, I playtested this subclass on the Insight Check channel. Now, I will say that there have been some changes to the monk since the playtest, but I'm still, I've got to say, I am over the moon with where the monk has ended up.
Imagined, it's essentially a brand new subclass. The Beastmaster in the Ranger, essentially a brand new subclass. And when we do videos on individual classes, we can dig deeper in other subclasses like them that are essentially brand new. And then we have other subclasses that are going to feel very familiar to people while at the same time having brand new options inside them.
And again, remember that like Weapon Mastery has left no class that uses Weapon Mastery untouched. Like that has changed the game.
Yes.
If you're a Paladin, if you're a Ranger, a Barbarian, a Rogue, a Fighter, the game is different now.
Absolutely. Every single class that is weapon focused, your play experience is going to be different now and more fun and more tactically interesting because of Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery is so juicy that through feats, we've also made it so that even if you're a member of a class who doesn't get it, you can take a feat to dip your toe into the Weapon Mastery pool.
I'm thinking right now because Todd just made a mistake, and I don't want to reveal anything specific, but if you heard what Todd said and you went, ooh, somebody's getting Weapon Mastery, I think he just slipped up.
As we've always had a feat that allows non-spellcasters, the Magic Initiate feat, to get a little bit of that spellcasting flavor.
I feel like the feats have also focused more on that wish fulfillment of, there's like the Skulker feat, and that has changed, where you really feel like, okay, now I can like attack in combat and not necessarily reveal myself. There's new features that make you feel like this feat, how I feel it should play, is playing that way now.
And there are way more feats.
There are a lot of feats.
But this book has 75 feats in it.
Yeah.
And it...
Yeah, so there are a huge amount more feats, and they are... Actually, I'm going to see if he mentions.
Includes not only a suite of feats that are for first-level characters that they get through their backgrounds, but we also now have epic boon feats that unlock for you when you reach level 19. And then between those epic feats and your what are called origin feats that you get at first level, you have many of the feats that were available to you before in the 2014 Player's Handbook, along with a number of new feats, some of which have migrated into the Player's Handbook from Tasha's Cauldron, and then have been enhanced in a variety of ways. We also have some things in the game that previously existed inside class features. So a great example of this are the fighting styles.
Right. That
shared tech has now migrated out of the classes into the feat system.
All right, so they've said everything I want them to say. So I can now talk about it. Okay, so what he's saying is 75 feats. He says that there's some feats that are level 1, you get through your background. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say what they're called, but they're called something. Then there are feats that are kind of the general feats that require 4 levels, and sometimes other prerequisites as well. And if you looked at the play tests, you saw that most of the Player's Handbook feats were redesigned to fit in this way. They all included a +1 to an ability score. Then you had fighting style feats, and then you had epic boon feats. And when they say 75, they mean 75 for all 4 of those kinds of feats put together. And what I will say is, obviously there were no epic boon feats before, so those will all be new. Fighting style feats weren't feats before, but they were in the game, so they're not going to seem particularly new, though some changes are there. Then you have your main feats. And I just accidentally said what the names of the level 1 feats are. So if there's a rough edit there, that's why. You have the level 1 feats. If you read the playtest, you know that there are some new feats there, and they're in the Player's Handbook. So those are there. And then with our level 4 feats, or level 4 or higher feats, there are Player's Handbook feats. There's Tasha's feats. There are not going to be any feats there that you haven't seen anywhere. They're all feats that you've seen in previous publications with revisions. So don't expect to be seeing a whole bunch of feats if you've been following the playtests that you haven't seen before. You're not going to see any. It's all stuff that's been somewhere for us to look at before.
And in addition to that, now in that category, for example, in the fighting style category, there are also now more options than there were in 2014.
All of this was done in consultation.
Yeah, when he says more options than 2014, he is not saying more options than 2019. Okay? Because, of course, we know additional fighting styles were added in Tasha's. So he's saying, well, that's more than 2014, and it is. But no surprise, you're not going to read the feat section. If you've read the playtests and you have Tasha's, there is going to be zero surprises there.
With the community through the Unearthed Arcana articles. Those articles helped inform us about how far could we go with the design. You know, how far was too far, how far was just right. And a lot of time and energy was spent by Jeremy and others poring over the information that the community was giving us, the feedback that they were giving us on the subclasses, on the feats. I think that there were times when we even, I think, pushed even farther than the fans really wanted to go, but they helped rein us in a little bit. What came out the other end, I think, is going to just surprise and delight people. And for people who have been invested in UA and paying very close attention to what's going on, they're still going to be surprised because some of the feedback they gave us led us down interesting, fun paths. And but they're also going to see, oh, these guys actually, you know, they took the feedback that I gave them and they made it better. And this is going to, so.
And you know what? I did see that during the playtest process as well. Like they would release something, it wouldn't get good reviews, so they would re-release and they would re-release, and we did see constant improvement. I mean, sometimes it was one step back, two steps forward, but overall, like by the end of playtest 8, I was way more satisfied than I was after the end of playtest 2. Right? Not even close.
Amp up my game.
And those shifts that we made based on the invaluable feedback that the community provided are really going to result in that surprise you're talking about, Chris. Like, for example, in the Unearthed Arcana process, we tried several different approaches to inspiration and how that rule works. Well, the version that's in the player's handbook never appeared in any of the Unearthed Arcana articles. But it was inspired by feedback that we received, because and it is now called heroic inspiration, right. Rather than dealing with advantage, which is what inspiration did in 2014, we realized this rule needs to play better with the rest of the game, and the game is already chock full of ways to get advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the final version of it is now a reroll, so not advantage, but is a reroll that the.
And I am happy about that. I think a lot of DMs. He did talk earlier before about things that were a lot of tables did as homebrew. I think I played at more tables where they've used inspiration as a reroll than as advantage. So this was kind of an obvious change, and I'm glad they made it.
Player can apply to any roll, not just D20 rolls, because what we realized is we also wanted you to be happy you have this, even when, let's say, you're rolling the amount of hit points.
And I'm going to have to reread that because I didn't even notice that change to heroic inspiration. I thought it was just tests, so I'm going to have to reread that. I've read through the player's handbook once.
You restore to somebody with a healing spell, or you're rolling damage, or the DM has you randomly roll a die for some mysterious reason, like DMs sometimes do. We want players to have this little ace in their pocket of, all right, I always know if I have heroic inspiration, if I roll really bad, no matter what the die roll is, I can use it and re-roll and hope I get something better.
And we're showing you as much art as we can, and layout and page design, and even then it's not the same as holding it, especially when it comes to like the alt covers as well. Yeah. There is a texture, there is a way the light.
So they're obviously going to spend some time talking about alt covers. I'm going to skip ahead. One thing I will mention is I think I like the alt covers more than the regular covers, personally.
The introduction does things like talk about the main components you need to play, which the Player's Handbook in the past has not done. It also, for anyone coming from the 2014 Player's Handbook, has a really critical sidebar that talks about what's new in the book. Also clarifies that this book, if is basically when you activate it in your game, this book does replace the 2014 Player's Handbook, and I think it's important for people to understand that, so we don't have people sort of trying to mix and match pieces of the two Player's Handbooks, but you can absolutely use this Player's Handbook with the adventures you already have for 5th edition.
But you can play a character from this new Player's Handbook right next to a character using the 2014 Player's Handbook as well. That's still true.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's important he says that because there's been a lot of wishy-washy language before about how, your old Player's Handbook, you can still use it, and the new Player's Handbook, and no. This is a replacement for the old Player's Handbook. So yeah, sure, you can play a 2014 fighter and throw them beside the 2024 fighter. You're not going to do very well because the 2024 fighter is better. But you could, and I mean, it would work kind of. There would be some things that there are rules that are different. We know. I'm not revealing anything to say grapple and shoving is different. And so I don't think, it would be perfectly viable to do it. But obviously, yeah, you're not going to use the 2014 Player's Handbook anymore. It goes away. The new one comes in. And the same thing goes with a lot of stuff like, there are feats there that are from Tasha. So which feat do you use? Well, you use this one, right? I would assume anything that's been reprinted here, this is the updated version. Anything from before that has been updated, that's now legacy content. Just like a rule before it got errated, right? If a rule gets errated, yeah, you still have in print the old rule, and you can still use it if your table prefers. But officially, use the errated version, right?
We have designed the new Player's Handbook so that characters built with it can be played with characters built with the 2014 Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
Now, that is true for the character options themselves. When it comes to the sort of baseline rules, the combat rules, the definitions of the conditions and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you are playing a 2014 character with 2024 characters, we have designed things so that the 2024 rules are what should be used in that situation.
Yeah.
Because those rules can handle a 2014 character being present, but the 2014 version of the rules will grind in a few places with a 2024 character. Sometimes because of terms used in the 2024 character that only have definitions now in the 2024 rules, whereas you again can take a 2014 character and play them in a 2024 game.
And that is to their advantage.
And I mean, I don't know how to say this, but if you're thinking you want to keep using your 2014 Player's Handbook, just don't buy the 2024 Player's Handbook. The 2024 Player's Handbook, in my opinion, is the superior book. And it's not perfect. I've already mentioned there are some frustrating things in there that I want to talk about, but they haven't revealed yet. But those were already frustrations in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and a lot of frustrations in the 2014 Player's Handbook are better here. So this is just the better book, in my opinion. So, you know, I'm going to have no problem just letting my 2014 Player's Handbook go.
Like being able to drink a potion with a bonus action.
Exactly. You're going to want even your 2014 character to be swimming in a 2024 pool because of the many improvements to the core rules.
Absolutely.
But then you'll go from that introduction into the first chapter, which teaches all the main rules of the game. Also sort of gets you used to referring to the rules glossary, because the book often, rather than going super deep on a particular rules topic, will give you the basics and then send you to the rules glossary for the nitty-gritty. Other times you'll get all of it in one place, depending on, you know, is there a version of the rule that you can learn that's just part of it versus do you need to know all of it at once?
Yeah.
And that first chapter has longer examples of play than we've ever done in a player's handbook
and those
before.
are fantastic. It's like you even have like art of the players around the table, and this happens, and this is what you rolled, and this is how that affected the game.
Along with commentary that explains what it is that you're reading about in that example of play. When you get to the character creation chapter, you, in addition to seeing the fun line art, are going to be brought step by step through the character creation process in a way that we've never done before, with also a lot of handy sort of get started quick bits in the chapter. Here's an example. When it comes time for you to assign your ability scores, if you've ever struggled, whether you're a brand new D&D player or maybe you're a veteran player but you're playing a class you haven't played before, and you've struggled with, well, how should I assign my ability scores? Particularly if you're using the standard array or point buy. Well, we now provide suggested ability score arrays for every class in the book so that you can get started playing quickly. If you really love optimizing your character, and when you choose your background, you're not just interested in its story implications, but you're really interested in how it's going to affect your
Okay, is he going to say something here?
ability scores. Well, knowing that there are players where that kind of optimization is important to them, the character creation chapter has a table that tells you here are the backgrounds to choose if you are looking for backgrounds that bump these certain ability scores.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so he's kind of said the big news. All right, so backgrounds. He just said if you're an optimizer, it's going to give you a guide as to which backgrounds you want to select to get the boons you want. If you are an optimizer who's been following the playtest, you know that's not the way it worked in the playtest. I'm not going to reveal the specifics, but there was something you could do in the playtest you can no longer do in the official player's handbook. Speculate away.
Fantastic.
And we provide that kind of assistance throughout the chapter. It goes even further than making a character at first level. It also provides rules for making a character at higher levels. We really want people to embrace this idea we've talked about throughout 5th edition.
And this is something I felt they needed to do, was to give a little more guidance what to do with a higher level character, including how to equip them. They've done that, and it's good.
That if you're playing with a group of experienced players and you want your brand new party to hit the ground running as a group of adventurers, we encourage you to start at 3rd level, not 1st. 3rd level is when every class now gets their subclass and all of their main class abilities. And to support starting at 3rd level, we have now the rules for starting at that level in the player's handbook, as well as at any other level. So if you want to start a character at 18th level because your DM wants you to dive right into epic play, the rules for that are in the player's handbook too. And then you go from there into classes, character origins, feats, equipment, and spells.
And also the species have been, there's a lot of new there as well. Like the All I can say is the Dragonborn feel very Dragonborn now. The Goliath feels exceptionally Goliath now.
Just the fact that there are species here who were in the 2014
Yeah, the Goliath
fleet.
wasn't in there.
The Goliath wasn't there, the Aasimar wasn't there, and the Orc wasn't there. So all three of those species now join other options that were present in 2014, and all of them have been enhanced in various ways. The community got to see an earlier draft of those enhancements in the Unearthed Arcana process, but since our game development continues beyond then, you're going to see even more. Great example of this, the Orc's Adrenaline Rush. The last time people saw it recharged only on a long rest, but in the final version actually recharges on a short rest or a long rest. The awesome.
And yeah, so he's just revealed there that the classes or the species that were in Monsters of the Multiverse, certainly the Orc, as it appeared in Unearthed Arcana, was identical to the way it appeared in Monsters of the Multiverse. Not identical.
For people who have not yet seen the new version, rather than choosing a celestial revelation that is sort of fixed for the rest of your character's life, you now get to choose that whenever you use that trait. And so again, there are fun new options everywhere in the book, species included.
Now, not only is the new Player's Handbook available for pre-order right now on D&D Beyond, you can find that link in the video description, but also the new core rulebooks, both digital and physical, are available for pre-order as a bundle that includes the new Dungeon Master's Guide, the new Monster Manual, and the new Player's Handbook. Can you tell me a little bit more about what's new in the Dungeon Master's Guide?
Okay, so the video goes on for quite a bit more, but it's all about Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual. I watched the Dungeon Master's Guide portion, and this was pretty much information if you've been paying attention, you already have. And the Monster Manual, I assume, is going to be the same. I haven't watched that part yet. But being that this is a 2024 Player's Handbook, everything you need to know, reaction, well, I think they're done talking about the Player's Handbook. So I have given my impressions on the things that they have revealed. And in the next few days, they're going to start rolling out videos like crazy, I guess, going over specifics like classes. And I definitely want to give my impressions of these things. I've been dying to publicly talk about them. So I'm looking forward to doing reactions for those videos as well. I don't know, this one should come out fairly soon after this video was released on the Dungeons & Dragons channel. I'm not sure if I'll keep that schedule or not through the classes, but I will react to all of it. And then come August 3rd, my NDA allows me to share the contents of the Player's Handbook and specifics, and you can bet I'll be doing a ton of that. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, everybody. Till next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.